at the end of week 5, so it means we got 4 more to go. Wednesday at lunchtime was the halfway point, although we're not counting, but we are. So anyway, first of all, I want to thank everybody that's on the call from the Transportation Committee, which met Tuesday down in Orlando, and a big congratulations to Laura and a thank you for raising $68,000 in one single day. So great job, Laura.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, members of the Transportation Committee.
All right, so we'll get started here. Our bill dealing with sovereign immunity for the sub-CEIs has moved again in the House. It passed its final committee on the 7th, a couple of days ago. It's on what they call the second reading calendar in the House, which just means it's ready for the House to take action on the floor. They're not on the floor every day right now. They'll be on the floor more and more as we get near the end of session. Last couple of weeks, they're there pretty much every day. So what we'll see now is I don't expect any problems with this bill, knock on wood. I don't think we'll get any more amendments. I think they can just take it up clean and get it out. So typically what happens here, and always keep in mind that the rules in the legislature are purely theoretical. It's kind of like, a baseball game. You get 3 outs in an inning unless the umpire only wants to give you 2 or 4 maybe if he likes you. So just remember, but I think this one will go right along with the rules, and it'll move to the special order calendar, which means it's been put on the agenda. Then they'll roll it to third reading, which is the final vote. It can be amended along the way, but again, I don't expect that this bill will be. In the Senate, 3 days ago, it passed Community Affairs Committee. It's got one more committee, the Rules Committee, before that one goes to the floor. So we're looking in good shape on that one. You can scroll down, Laura. I'm sitting here trying to scroll. These bills here haven't moved. That's the continuing contracts bill. It's got left in it is increasing the threshold for construction from 4 million to 7.5 million. So it's a pretty clean bill at this point. We're watching it, but not really taking any action on it. But it will be up next week in its second committee in the Senate or in the House. Or what? That's weird. I've got 2 bill numbers there, but that's the Senate bill. So. This bill's moving along well as well. It's had unanimous votes in all of its committees. It limits impact fees in some circumstances, but provides for alternative funding methods. It's ready to go in the House. It's on second reading as well. And in the Senate, it's still got one more committee, which is the Rules Committee. The sovereign immunity bills, they were moving and seem to have slowed up, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. I know cities and counties fight that one hard. We would just as soon not see that one just because of the impact on CEIs and their liability due to the sovereign immunity increase, but it is a small increase. It takes it from $200,000 to $400,000. Okay, I don't know why these things are showing up as 2 bills, but I have to go back and check my report. But Senate Bill 266, I want to talk about a little bit. Laura, if you could pull up that email. Is Melissa on the call? Don't hear her.
I don't think so.
Okay, so for those who've been on this call, Melissa McKinley from WGI has brought up a couple of times that Dave Wantman had questioned some of the language. All of us that were looking at it, including our general counsel, thought that the bill was okay, and we didn't really have any issues with it. But I got Kurt, our general counsel, with Dave Wantman a week ago on Friday to discuss his concerns, and there is this one piece that's in this bill What you're seeing here is an email I sent to John last night because I had gotten Kurt's comment. So it's lines 485 through 493. And then you can see if you scroll down just a little bit, Kurt says, the most objectionable part is that it fails to address comparative fault. So, if the general contractor or the contractor was responsible for, 40%, and, the an engineer was, 60% or maybe even less than that. This just to him takes the general contractor out. They would have immunity, and so they're going to line up. People are going to line up to go after the subs, but especially we'll line up to go after the engineer. So, and then the second part, it just makes it so that the general contractor, is not responsible for their own subs. And he explains that there, but basically, puts the engineer and others in a increased liability situation. So John has spoken to the Senate sponsor. He said keep him in the loop, and so I sent this to John last night after I got the information from Kurt, so that John can have further conversations with him. There is a piece, but it's just kind of clarifying that later in the bill, and we're just adding some language that helps the engineer out, and where they have followed the department standards. I guess from what I'm hearing, and people feel free to chime in if you want, that a lot of time in those standards, and a lot of this has to do with barriers and truck drivers not running over stuff and causing damage or causing accidents, and evidently that's fairly frequent out there on these projects. So I'll give Nance a call today. John will be talking to the sponsor, see if we can get something worked out here. I don't mind if the contractors get some extra liability protection, as long as we get it too. So, or then neither of us should get it. So, but we'll be working on that. I don't know if anybody has any comments or suggestions on this. Oh, I started to say, but there's going to be some language added that just says as long as the engineers follow the standards. I guess what it is sometimes you have options, and so what's happening is, the argument once you get to court is that you picked the wrong option. And what we're saying in the other language it's going to be added, and Nance has agreed to this other language, is that as long as you have followed the standards, whichever option you chose, you're still protected. Nothing on that one? Yeah, that's the companion bill. So we'll get to the House member when it's time. Senator Hooper in the Senate's really, in the lead on that bill, which is why we're working with him right now. Okay, these bills here have well, this one did pass the Transportation Committee, which concerns me a little bit. This is the one that would abolish the Florida Transportation Commission. Sometimes if I see that, and this may not be the case, but I see them at the last minute, as we're getting to the point where if you haven't got it through the first committee, most of the time you're not going to get that bill passed if it hasn't gotten through yet. So the fact that they put it up and got it out of the first committee means now it's alive. And it can be used, the language can be used as an amendment, or there's a number of different ways they can move, but it's just a very important piece to get a bill passed, that you get it out of that first committee. So they did that Wednesday on the Senate side. It was done last week on the House side. Now I still understand that on the House side, Chairman Payne, chairman of the Infrastructure Strategies Committee, has said that he's not going to let it go. So that being said, that gives a lot of comfort, but I don't know I don't know if a game's being played over there in the Senate or not to try to get that moving. Derek, have you heard anything on that one?
I have not, Alan.
Okay. I'm going to be talking to Lita in a little bit because going back to that 266, there's some other language in there that requires the department to get on design build projects to get at least 3 letters of interest and before they can move forward. And so there was some concern at the Transportation Committee the other day, but I'm going to call Lita here later this morning and talk with her about that. All right, so these are the ones we discussed last week. And Derek, you had a lot of information on this. Is there anything new compared to what we talked about last week on the call?
So changes have been made to the bill. They've completely stricken out the COVID language in 1301. So those bills are moving and getting there. We should see the Senate bill pick up a little bit in this pace. The department has been working closely with staff and with the governor's office on these bills, and so they've addressed for the most part the concerns that were raised in initial committee.
All right. And I see I failed to update that Senate bill, so it did pass this week.
Right.
And so you're right, it's moving. And then the aviation bill, I don't really have anything further on that one right now. Derek, you might, but I know there was a lot of information that was being passed after this was discussed last week. If anybody has any further questions or comments, or Derek, if you have any information on this one.
Yeah, I can speak quickly to this one. So that this bill did pass yesterday in committee by Senator Harrell. There were concerns raised by at least one party as relates to the advanced air mobility piece, and that's all getting itself worked out in that regard. But we should see 981, the House version, will more likely be up next week, and they'll get that bill to the floor. There is some confusion on the Senate side with their bill that's concerning the House. So the House is wants to get their bill advanced pretty fast to get it to the floor, with hopes that the Senate will just do a strike all, delete everything, and line their bill up with the House version. There's this question about vertiports and as it relates to special districts versus just general vertiports, and what you can or cannot say. For example, they can't dictate to a vertiport that's on a special district how they can do contracts, because that's a municipality, but they can if you are general. And so things like that are being worked through. But ultimately 981 by Bankson will be up in committee next week supposedly, and they'll pass that out and get on the floor, get over to the Senate swiftly, and get the Senate to agree to that language. And so there's still maybe amendment that may be done. There's some language that's not in the Senate bill that needs to be put in there. So that's still being worked out, but it's on pace to get there. And I think ultimately the bill gets to the finish line.
All right. Then we have the interstate mobility bills. Laura, can you scroll down just a little bit? I think this is the one that has not moved in the House. Correct. Okay, so these are the bills, that make it easier for people with professional licenses that don't live in Florida. Makes it easier for them to get a license in Florida. As you can see, the House bill there, and you can scroll back up just a little bit, Laura. It's got everything in it. It's got the medical professions. It's got, doesn't name us specifically, but there's some language in there that has the Board of Professional Engineers concerned. But that has not moved in the House. And so, as I said earlier, if you don't have your bill through the first committee by now, you're getting in trouble. Do you know when those committees stop meeting, Derek? I forget the date.
Yeah,
Like
so Commerce is these 3 committees that the House bill has. They're all considered to be big committees, and so they're allowed to meet through week 5 through day 50, which would be February 27th.
Mm-hmm.
The Senate has put this bill a part of Tier 2 of the Live Healthy Act, so they're pushing hard on the House to get some level of movement going. But you are right, there's a lot of concern behind the scenes a lot of groups on this bill, and so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But
Picture
Not yet.
yet?
each of those committees can go until, for the
I'm in a
most part,
meeting.
February 27th. And Commerce is chaired by Representative Ramo. They need to get him to hear the bill first, and he hasn't been, too motivated to hear the bill thus far.
God bless him. Okay, and then that final bill is the one, it doesn't have a Senate companion, so I'm not too worried about it, but it would allow the secretary to overrule the board if they decide that an applicant from out of state, that the state where they're from, the requirements there aren't, substantially the same as ours, would allow the secretary to overrule that decision. So I know there's some things, I don't know if anyone's on the call that's been following this, but there's some language that the Board of Professional Engineers would like to get in statute. And a lot of it is just cleaning up some old language that really isn't useful anymore, but there's some other issues as well. And they would like to do that. And so I'll be looking, but I'm not gonna, I need a bill that deals with licensure so that it's germane. But we don't want either one of these bills. So I don't want to go in and put something we do want on a bill that we don't want, because that would indicate then that we're supporting the bill. So I'll be looking for a vehicle to try to do that. And we'll see if we can't get that done for them this session. So any questions? Comments? Quiet group.
Hey, Alan,
Mm-hmm.
Joe DiStefano here. I was going to ask that bill, that Senate Bill 266 you were talking about, and you mentioned that, I caught it at the I guess Walter brought it up at the transportation meeting this past week. The part about the minimum of 3 letters. Do you know what the origin of that is, of where that's coming from, or is that part of what you're going to try to find out?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I don't know if that's because the department hasn't said anything to any of us. So I don't know if you know who Lita is, Lita Kelly, the chief of staff over at DOT. And that's the reason I'm going to talk to her this afternoon, is to find out, number one, are they okay with that? Who's it coming from? Is it coming from them, or is it coming from somewhere else? And I'll get that ironed out this afternoon.
Okay, because I know a lot of times there may be less than that, and a lot of people put a lot of effort into it going in, and then to have it thrown out or whatever, it would be, a lot of wasted effort. So
yeah, I don't know if whoever's doing it, if they're just looking at the CCNA requirements, which requires at least 3 in a lot of cases, but it's design build, so CCNA doesn't apply.
right. Okay.
Well, it's common practice for stuff that applies for CCNA. If the DOT only gets 2 responses, then that's what they go with. I mean, they'll try and get a third. They'll re-advertise, but if they only have 2, that's what they use. So
Yeah, that's what we do here in Tallahassee. If there's a rule or a law, it's just a theory.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right, folks. Well, like I said, we got 4 more to go, and congratulations again, Laura, and we will do it again next week.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Thank you, Alan.
weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all.
thank you.